Hey, this is Jim Howard with Trinity Security Allies. On the other end is Jessica helping us out again tonight. She's up at Embry Riddle. We kind of kicked this idea around a couple of weeks ago about talking about some of the things that we have seen with the current administration and how we feel like churches should be aware of what is going on. This is not a political statement. This is not a recommendation on who to vote for or what to look at, but it's kind of one of these type of things of where we wanted to come out and talk a little bit about things that you should be aware of that have been going on in the background that you might not have heard of, but it could affect your church. It could affect you sometime in the future. It's one of these things that we've talked about a couple of times in our True Christian Talk, and we brought that up over and over again. And so tonight we're going to kind of like get into some of them that we have a full hour on that you could go out and listen to on our True Christian Talk page on YouTube. But right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Jessica, and I'm going to let her talk about some current events that are going on.
Hi, everyone. So as most of you probably know, every week on Sundays, we send out an email with current events. And so what we like to do on Thursday nights is just kind of go over some of the ones that we have seen already this week. All of these will be in the email, and in the follow-up email that I send out to everybody here, I will send out the link to sign up for those. So I'm just going to go ahead and read some of the ones that we have. The first one is a South Nashville church members were chased by a woman with a steel pipe. And what this is this individual was high on methamphetamines and chased a bunch of church members with this steel pipe. Law enforcement was called, and I don't believe anyone was injured. But this is a very interesting scenario. Definitely a what if training at your church, because that is not something that you see every day. The second one that we have, we're seeing a lot of vandalisms. If you do get our current events email, you would see that last week we posted something about how there is an increase in church vandalisms, and we are on track to have the highest number of church vandalisms in a year since 9/11. So we're seeing a lot of vandalism. So we're not posting all of them, but we are posting some of the ones that we haven't seen before. One of them was a church sign was shot at twice in Pennsylvania. And so the state police are investigating that, obviously, because if you have a sign that's been shot, that indicates a lot of violence. Another one that we have is there was a Fargo church statue that was beheaded in an act of vandalism. I believe it was a statue of St. Mary. And so that is very unfortunate for that church, because now they have to obviously replace the statue. We see a lot of graffiti and flags torn down and things like that as well. Some other ones that we wanted to bring up as well. There was a church pastor who was arrested on prostitution charges. We're seeing a lot of these where law enforcement does either an anti-human trafficking or a sting to catch child predators, and church pastors are getting arrested in those charges. So we're seeing a lot of those. There was an incident at a Texarkana church where they had vandalism and a suspicious package, and the FBI are investigating. Thankfully, the suspicious package was not a bomb. However, members and people in the surrounding area were evacuated. So that is another interesting what if. We had a training a couple months ago about what to do if you had a bomb threat at your church. And so this would also be something to consider, kind of a what if scenario. And the other thing that we had was a former church staffer was accused of molesting teen boys during the church service. And so obviously that's just a horrible situation. We've done a couple of trainings just on things to look out for in staff and volunteers, and just to be sure that your children are protected in your church. And so, as I said, all of these will be sent out in the current events email, sent out on Sundays, but these are just some of the ones that we saw already this week.
Thank you, Jessica. All right, let's get started. All right, like I said, Kevin Haggerty and I talk on Thursdays. We did it yesterday because Kevin is in New York this Thursday, but we talked on different things that we see that Christians in the world, and what Christ said is a fallen world, we should be doing, how we should be handling things, how we should be reacting to things. And this week we did talk about the election in Virginia. I feel like that was a very important election, and it showed a lot of things that people were upset about, and it was things that we have talked about as far as critical race theory and the education of students and the children. And so this election, I mean, you need to take a look at it and kind of pay attention to what happened there, because people really started to see things that were happening to their kids. Now, if there's one thing that we can say was positive about COVID, and we talked about this, the because of COVID and the schools shutting down and everything went online, parents were able to watch what was going on in their schools because they were sitting behind their children watching the videos. It got to the point to where teachers started to complain about this because parents were complaining about some of the things that they were teaching. And this started a whole different movement in the state of Virginia. And it's very important that we look at this state and we kind of pay attention to, as I said, what happened, what is being taught in our schools. This is very important. We live in the state of Florida, and I'm very happy about that. And Governor DeSantis has made sure that critical race theory will not be taught in the schools, because it is a racist training, and it is a sin. God has always told us that He's made us all in His image. We all look, I mean, we are all the same to Him. It does not matter what color we are of the same blood. And, at our conference, we had Dr. Mark Jones come in and talk about, just things that he does, that he wants us to make sure that we do not do these things that cause division in the church through things like racism and different avenues like that. So one of the couple of things that we saw when we first started doing this True Christian Talk was right after Biden was elected for president. We saw an article that was done, not an article, a document that was sent to, it was prepared exclusively by the Secular Democrats of America PAC for President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. Now, when I first heard about this document, I kind of went out and looked at the Secular Democrats of America. And this is their homepage here. And it's got the American flag back here. It's got, kind of some nice colors and stuff. And it has this statement. It says, "We are a network of Democrats advocating for inclusion of non-religious Americans." Now, that kind of is a little scary there, and mobilizing to protect our secular democracy. We organize to protect religious freedom. Well, that sounds great, and defend the constitutional separation of religion and government. But then you got to go a little deeper, because they prepared a document, like I said, for President-elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And in that document, they said a lot of things that were kind of a little scary there. It was not one of these things that I like I said, all of a sudden I realized they're not for religion. They're not for Christianity. Let's put it this way. And what they did, like I said, this is the front of this document that they did: restoring constitutional secularism. I'll get it here in a second. And patriotic pluralism in the White House. And so when you kind of look at it, you're like trying to figure out what the heck's going on. And what they did, let me go back one page here. They wrote a letter to President-elect Joe Biden, and they said, "We urge you not to underestimate the institutional strength of what we refer to interchangeably in this document as Christian nationalist movement or the religious right. This movement is extraordinarily well-funded and well-organized, and the manifestation of its extreme and sectarian agenda is on constant display under the Trump-Pence administration." Now, here's where it gets really scary. Its political ideology is anti-democratic, anti-scientist, and it provides constant cover for white supremacy. Now, you may look at this and go, wait a minute here. We're not white supremacists in our church. I mean, we're just Christians. We are Christians. We may be conservatives. We may be liberals. It doesn't really matter. We are Christians. But what it says here is that because of who you are, it provides constant cover for white supremacy. Now you may say, well, that's kind of stupid, Jim. Nobody could come to our church and see that. We don't ever preach anything like that or say those type of words or things like that. You're absolutely right. You do not say those things in the pulpit. You never would say those things in the pulpit. But if I were to drive around in your parking lot and I would see Trump bumper stickers or NRA bumper stickers, they're going to list you as constant cover for white supremacy. They're going to look at your church like that. And it goes on, it says the remainder of this document will focus on 4 major areas that are critical to secularism and non-religious community. These 3 areas, the first 3 areas is where we believe President Trump has violated basic constitutional principles and elevated religious privilege over the Bill of Rights and the common good. The 4th area of focus is protecting the rights and dignity of non-thesis. Now, they're kind of coming out and saying that not everybody's a Christian, and we as Christians have put these people down and blamed all the problems of the world on them. Okay, we might have a problem. I mean, okay, I understand that. But what they wanted to do is go out and take away the religious exemptions that have already been put into place by the Supreme Court. One of them was the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Now, what that applied was, when it talked about, was that decisions like the Hobby Lobby in the Supreme Court need to be overturned because they want every organization to bow down to the political point of view of providing contraceptives for their employees. When they don't believe it, it is a religious freedom, a religious right that they don't believe in that. And that's one of these type of things that they want to be overturned. They want to overturn a Fulton versus the city of Pennsylvania, where it was the families were given money to be able to put their students, they were given grants to be able to put their students in any school that they wanted to. And they came up and said that they could not use this money for religious schools or Christian schools. Now, they fought that and they lost it in the Supreme Court, but they want to change that. They want to get rid of that also. So these are things that are sitting out here in the background that a lot of churches may not understand this. They even wanted to change terminology. It was, it just, this whole document, and what we're going to do is we're going to include this document when we send out who was on here, but we're going to include this document so you can read it upon yourself and see some of the things that they really were trying to go against. They were going against one of the things that they said, given the house of worship are exempt from requirements that apply to all other 501c3 organizations, including filing a Form 990. This funding amounts to a taxpayer-funded giveaway to secretary entrance, of which the government has no means to conduct oversight, and the receipt are not held accountable to American taxpayers. So they want to get rid of the money that might be giving, like the Paycheck Protection Program. They didn't want any of that to go to Christian organizations because they felt like they should not be, they should not receive these funds because they were a 501c3 organization. They also went down and got into different, things on scientific integrity, by saying that the stuff that we teach is not scientifically based. Well, there's been a lot of things that's been proven by the Bible, and it's kind of like they just continue to push this on. But this is a large document. This is 28 pages. And when you read it, you really realize that if somebody took this to the next level, there would be a definite attack on the Christian conservatives in the United States. So this is just one thing that we saw. There's others out here, but we're only going to talk about 2 that we really feel that we really need to be paying attention to. Now, the second one that happened was the IRS versus the Christians Engaged. Now, the Christians Engaged, you kind of go to their webpage, and on their webpage, they put down that they are a Christian organization. Hang on one second, please. They're a Christian organization, okay, or they're Christians Engaged, exist to awaken, motivate, educate, and empower ordinary believers in Jesus Christ to engage our hearts in some form of civic education and involvement for the well-being of our nation. That doesn't sound really bad, but the IRS kind of went after them and said that because you are a Christian, or you basically are a Christian organization, that we're not going to let you have a 501c3 status. And we'll include this document also, because they were kind of sneaky about this when they did it, and it was really interesting. At the top of the document, they put in a legend, and then in the legend it said like B is equal to July the 22nd, 2019. C is equal to Texas, but then they put D is equal to Republican. So when you're reading this and you're going through this document, you keep coming up and seeing this. Your founder and president is a motivational public speaker, former D congressional candidate. Now, when you see that D in your mind, you're thinking that means Democratic or Democrat. Well, it doesn't. It means Republican. But it also goes in to say this: your secretary, you described as a conservative millennial thought leader with a marketing and political consultant background. He now serves as the executive director of K, which is Collin County Victory Efforts, where he manages the party's team, field, and the grassroots get out the vote efforts. So you say that your mission statement indicates that you exist to awaken, motivate, and empower ordinary believers in Jesus Christ to pray for the nation, vote in every election to impact the culture, engage hearts in some form of political education or activism for the future of the nation, and strive to educate Christians on the importance of prayer, voting, and engagement in a nonpartisan manner. Now, that's a key word in there, nonpartisan manner. They're not telling you who to vote for. They're just educating you on the issues that are in front of you. I've said this a whole lot of times to my friends who may be leaning toward the left or be, a Democrat, that I vote for. One of the first things I look for is pro-life. If the candidate is not pro-life, they lose my vote immediately. If they're not pro-Israel, they lose my vote. If they're not pro-police, they lose my vote. But we could have a Republican one day, because we just don't know the way this country's going. It's kind of scary at times, but we could have a Republican that could step up and say that they were not pro-life. And I would have a hard time with that. I would have a hard time voting for that person. But when it gets in here, it talks about why they're going to not let them have a 501c3. And it says, you do not qualify as an organization described in the IRC section 501c3. You engage in prohibiting political campaign intervention. Doesn't say that at all. It doesn't say that at all. But it says that, because you are a Christian and you organize Christians to vote in political, campaigns and stuff like that, the Bible teachings they said this too. The Bible teachings are typically affiliated with the Republican Party and candidates. This disqualifies you from exemptions under the IRC section 501c3. So now I'll give you something that happened. There's a pot of gold at the end of this rainbow here, because they immediately reached out to attorneys and were able to get this flipped. And I mean, it was right quick. But the thing of it was, it was just like this is some of the things they say. You educate Christians on what the Bible says in areas where they can be instrumental, including the areas of sanctity of life, the definition of marriage, biblical justice, freedom of speech, defense, and borders and immigration, U.S. and Israel relationships. So because of your Christian belief and what you believe in, we're going to deny you a 501c3 status. Now, like I said, it was quickly overturned. It was really quickly overturned because of what had happened with the administration, 2 administrations back, not the last administration, but the one before that, where IRS had went against those that had Tea Party or conservatives in their names and their titles, and had denied them 501c3 status, and had also decided to not allow a Christian organization a 501c3 status. So during that, the Lois Lerner, that case had happened, it became known as the Lerner rule. You could not do it because of religion. You could not give them a 501c3 status. But right here, if this organization had not contacted an attorney, a civil rights attorney that knew all about this and everything like this, they wouldn't have got their 501c3 status. So they kind of make sure, they have all these other things that are going over, like over here to your left, and they're kind of like talking to you about it over here on the left, but don't look to see what's going on the right. And these are some things that really kind of concern us, because they will try to do other things that maybe you don't have the money to have an attorney like, the Christians Engaged did. Now, I'm for sure that the attorneys that took on this took it on, with no pay to go after the government to help them out just because of what was going on here. But that doesn't happen all the time. That doesn't happen all the time. So when we see these things come up, and we're going to, like I said, we're going to include these documents in the email that we send out to you. We see these things pop up, it does kind of concern us. Now, there's a couple of other things that are happening around the corner that we're watching and we're keeping a close eye on. They're about to mandate that if you have a company that is over 100 people, that they have to be COVID vaccinated. Now, whether or not you believe in the COVID vaccine is your business. I have been vaccinated. I can tell you that Jessica, that's online here tonight, has been to 3 separate doctors. And because of things in her health, they have recommended that they have not recommended her taking it. So she's listening to her doctors. But if she was working at a company that had over 100 employees, they would want to force that. Now, there are religious exemptions and things like that, but a lot of these people don't get them because the companies are just saying, no, we're not going to listen to this. So this is one of these things that we really have to make sure that we're paying attention. Now, other things that we're seeing, this is happening out in California, is where they're saying that if a person has transgender ideas, that if they go to a counselor, an actual counselor, now they're watching it because they didn't really throw in a Christian counselor, but they said that if you go to a counseling session, that counselor by law cannot talk you out of your thoughts if you want to become a transgender. Now that's a little scary there. And we're watching that. Like I said, that's out in California. We understand that. I probably would not, I don't see it ever coming in across the country, but there's just things that they may do. They may require you to have a bathroom for a transgender person. They may put it into place that you have to have a bathroom for a transgender person inside your church, or allow people to go inside your bathrooms that are transgender. Now, we've talked about that before, and this is one of these issues that we really feel like you should put it into your bylaws or your rules and regulations, or the church rules, that the bathrooms are set up for what your race, sex is on your birth certificate. And we talked about that. And I think that's something that every church needs to be thinking about, because they are going to be tested, maybe not in the state of Florida, maybe in the state that you're at, but it's things that we need to make sure that we're paying attention to, because we've seen audits, what they call audits. We saw the kid that was going through Florida talking about global warming. He had somebody that was going with him that was videotaping it. And we've seen here recently that in the Virginia race, where a photographer staged what looked to be white supremacist at a Youngkin event, which turned out not to be true, that they were all working for the Democratic Party or Lincoln Project. So they will do this to you. They will send somebody in with a camera just to see how you're going to respond. These are things that we have to be paying attention to as a safety team member and leader. We need to be watching for people that might come in and try to test the church on the current condition of the laws that are out here floating around. Like I said, we are very fortunate we live in the state of Florida, but that doesn't mean that somebody won't test you. That doesn't mean that something won't happen that would cause you embarrassment, would cause you to end up in court over a suit. And if you're not a big court and don't have a lot of money, you might not be able to get the representation that you really need. So these are things that we want you to keep your eyes open. This is one of the reasons why we kind of push the True Christian Talk, is because we talk about every single issue that we're seeing. And there are a lot more that we could talk about, but it's it's just not enough time for tonight. We could do a whole 2-hour session on different things that we're seeing going on across the country that Christian churches need to be paying attention to make sure that they are protected and not to be sued. So these things that we'll send out to you, if you have a chance and want to read it, do read it. It's interesting stuff. Like I said, what happened to Christians Engaged, it just, when I first heard about it, I could not believe it because it sounded exactly like the previous administration, where they had went on refusing to do our 501c3 statuses for organizations that had Patriot or, Tea Party or things like that in their title. So we have to be careful of this. We have to pay attention to what's going on, even in our country. Virginia is a prime example of where people got involved and saw what was going on and said, enough is enough. And so, like I said, we live in a great state. It's really good to be down here. I heard that the governor, the new governor, Youngkin, was going to immediately sign an executive order to make sure that none of the schools taught critical race theory. But you even have to be careful with that, because the teachers union has said that if a teacher wants to teach that, they will represent them in case they get into some sort of being fired or reprimanded for what they do. So there again, if you have a school that's on your property, be careful. So we've gone for 30 minutes. I'm going to open it up for questions. If there's any questions out there, please feel free. Like I said, we're going to pass this information out to you so you do see what we're talking about and you can understand it if I have not explained it well enough, because it is a little deep. The IRS going against the Christians is not a hard one to read. It just is flat out just says, we're not going to give you this because you're teaching the Bible. You're encouraging Christians to be political activists, So these are things that it's just, when you read this, it's crazy. It's nuts that they would even attempt to do something like this when they had already been smacked before. So, we have to pay attention to these things. So any questions?
I'm not seeing any questions, but I will ask one.
Okay.
So aside from just being aware of what's going on, what are some other proactive things that churches can be doing, or individuals from churches can be doing, to either combat this or to just get more involved?
Well, things like what we're doing the True Christian Talk, where we're talking about this, and you can go out on your own time and put this, pull up one of our YouTubes and just listen to it. You don't have to watch it. You can listen to it while you're doing other things. But we're out here looking at this all the time. And when we see stuff that we feel like might affect the church, we'll probably bring it out here. We talked about critical race theory and intersectionality on one of these webinars one night, because it hit one of our churches here in St. Pete, and it was really sad because it was splitting the church apart. People that had been there and had been involved in creating this church, been involved, it's from the beginning, planning this church, left the church because of critical race theory, being pushed by the pastor. We talk about in one of our True Christian talks, we talk about some of the woke pastors that we see right now that are coming out and just telling us, of course, that we're all racist, which is just such crap. That is such a sin to me, because it's not teaching what the gospel teaches us. We are all together. There's no difference between Jew and Gentile, slave or master, or male or female in God's eyes. He sees us all as Christians. And so we have to make sure that we stress that and we preach that. Yes, racism is a sin. Yes, racism does exist, but so does alcoholism, so does pornography, so does adultery, all these things like this. We'll never, ever get rid of it until Christ comes back again. But what we have to understand is we have to be prepared if it starts to come into our church. So listen to us. We'll be putting things out. Go listen to True Christian Talk. We'll keep you advised on some of the things that we see. We'll have other nights like tonight where we talk about these things that we see. There's that one that I was talking about that happened in California. One of the things that they were really worried about was they were afraid it was going to ban the Bible, what they talked about of not talking a person out of becoming a transgender or not talking to them about the reasons why to or why not to. And Christian counselors are the ones that they're really taking the hit on. Because if you go to a Christian counselor and start talking to that, they're going to go with the biblically based reason why that's just not right. So that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And I don't see any new questions, but if anybody has any questions later on, I will be watching the chat. James Shoemaker just said that he is reading a new book by Dave Meyer, Joyce Meyer's husband, titled "Freedom is Costly but Priceless. If not maintained, it will not remain." And he said that he highly recommends it. And I can send that out in the follow-up email as well.
Sounds good. All right. Well, if nothing else, then let's go through real quick. Can't say this enough. If you carry a concealed weapon, you really need to be protected. So look at USCCA. If you have any questions, please contact us on it. We'll talk to you about it. We'll get you in touch with Ricky. We're going to try to get him on one night to where he can talk on the webinar and just talk about some more of the stuff that he talked about at the conference. Fireworks. Just to let you know, we are going to start putting out the videos that we were able to get. One of our friends did do a lot of the recordings, so we're going to be putting the videos out for our members out on the YouTube member page. So be watching for those. They're coming out soon. We do have free resources out there, putting together a safety plan, developing a safety team, carrying weapons in church and Sunday morning, what to look for. There are PDFs that you can pull down, easy to read. They won't put you to sleep, but it's just good stuff. We have our online membership program, of course. Sign up today to access our online church safety training. Library is just $25 a month. This is going to increase in the first of the year. We're going to try to do a push and get as many people as we can online. This membership supports the ministry. I cannot tell you how much we appreciate it, because without you and without your support, we wouldn't be here right now. So it is going to go up. We may even have a sale toward the end of the year. I don't know. I got to talk to my financial advisor, Wendy, and we'll just see what happens. Church safety and security membership program, $125 a month or $1,200 for the year. This will increase also. This guarantees you 2-hour training, two 2-hour training sessions or a full day of training, scheduled phone calls, 5 tickets to the annual church safety and liability conference, discounted full strength and weakness assessment with recommendations. Safety team has full access to the online library and monthly member only calls. If your church cannot afford a membership, consider local businessmen. We have several different churches that have people that pay for the safety of their church. You can visit trainingsecurityallies.com or contact Wendy at trainingsecurityallies.com. All right, these are trainings that we're offering right now. We got situational awareness, threat profiling. If you're new to our training, this would be what we would recommend. These two right here. We also do verbal de-escalation, what if, mental illness in the church, and laser shot. I just watched a webinar that the FBI put on, and I've watched 2 now that the FBI has put on, that mental illness is really starting to grow. I hate to use that word grow, but it is really starting to, they're seeing a lot more of it, and they're seeing a lot more of it in acts of violence. We have 2 new videos that we've been training on, one that's local where mentally ill lady got up on stage of one of our churches, and we're about to put out another one where a guy took on the church, took on the safety team. And when I went and found some more stuff about that, this person was probably not mentally ill as what we would call it, but there was some issues that he was under a lot of stress and depression had set in and some different things like that. So that falls underneath that rim, but it's one of those that I don't classify as what we've seen in other issues. But disruptive attendees are going to start coming into the church. And I think we could do a whole class on that, especially underneath the threat profiling. And of course, we also have our laser shot, where we put you in a situation to where you have to make a decision. You try to talk this person out, or you have to react to what is going on in front of you. Members only this Thursday, November the 18th, we will be having the members only Zoom to where we can come out and talk about things that are happening inside your church. these are very, the last one that we had was just fantastic. We got a lot of information from one of our sponsored churches, and it was just really good. So I really encourage you, if you are a member, to come out to these. This is where you can talk. You can ask questions. You can tell us about things that are going on in your church, things that you've seen. I mean, we still have churches that are handling the COVID issue. I mean, it's still out there, and that's not probably going to go away for a while. So we like to hear what's happening. We like to hear what you're doing. We like to hear where you're at as far as mass, unmasked, or mixed, or whatever. But we always like to hear those things. So I talked about True Christian Talk already. Talk about it just one more time real quick. Come out and listen to this. Go out to our YouTube page, subscribe for us, because what we're trying to do, as soon as we get over 100, they give us our own URL, which means a lot, means that we probably won't be canceled like we were canceled on Facebook. So we're trying to get as many followers as we can so that we can start moving into a better platform and a more secure platform with YouTube. The reviews are out. This book is doing really well. We're really excited about it. I mean, it's just, listen, this is all about God's grace. That's just all there is. This is not about church security. This is about, if you read a book like this, my book, you can tell other people that God will take anybody, will love anybody, and will forgive them of their sins. And that's what this book is all about, is just finding God's grace. All right, Jessica, is there anything else out there?
Larry Booth just said, he said 2 things on slide 6. We are not a democracy, but a constitutional republic. And there's a vast difference in scientific views. Not every doctor has the same view of a procedure, drug, etc.
He's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. I'd have to go back and see if that was a secular Democrat one. Not really for sure. But thank you, Larry. Anybody else?
I just want to add too that we're on Facebook and Instagram. And so we're also going to be posting some of those things out there as well. And you'll find links to register for these trainings in the future, and the current events email, as well as a link to the book and True Christian Talks YouTube, all on our Instagram. So it's all right there, easy, helpful.
She has now become our social person. All right, folks, if there's nothing else, thank you for coming out tonight. Really appreciate your time and your effort. Please be safe out there, be blessed, and we will chat with you next week. God bless you. God bless this country.